Joining me live from Danglemar this morning is the acting Prime Minister, Barnaby Joyce. Thanks so much for your time, Barnaby Joyce. My understanding, if we can go through the deal, some of the detail of it. My understanding is that the National Party secured the exclusion of Scope 3 emissions from the calculation of the net zero target by 2050. Scope 3 emissions, for those that aren't aware, basically the emissions of our exports overseas. Once it's exported, it's the emission overseas, but had potentially been factored into our net zero. You've secured the exclusion of that. Is that right? And why did you do that?
Yeah, obviously we did a lot more than that. I don't think that would have swung the room around if that's all we did. Scope 3 emissions is like accounting for your carbon emissions from coal mining in Australia, then counting it for them again when they burn it in China. It's basically double counting. Or you could do the same thing, I suppose, in a variant form in cattle. You account for what they do here, and if there was any further emissions on utilisation of beef or wheat or something overseas, you account for them again. So it most pronounced, obviously, in coal. And we had to make sure that we maintained the what is a vital part of regional Australia, Kieran, whether it's Gladstone, whether it's Emerald, whether it's Billawheeler, Muswellbrook, Singleton, Newcastle, large section of Newcastle. These towns, there are no renewable towns, there are coal mining towns, and until we get so-called renewable towns, we better look after the coal mining jobs, otherwise people are just going to be unemployed and poor. That's not for us.
So that if we go through some other elements, Scope 3 emissions excluded. Now, I'm also told that carbon credits are going to be counted as farm income. Why is that important? Yep. You're an accountant yourself, but I know that under the Emissions Reduction Fund, a lot of farmers do get already credits and funds. Why is it important that it's counted as farm income? Why did the Nationals want that included in the deal?
Because you can average it over 5 years. That's primary production income can be averaged over 5 years as opposed to normal income, which is as you get it. There's probably three types of income. Obviously, there's income as you get it, your salaries and wages, a business profit. There's primary production income, which is averaged over 5 years. It's the same for writers and authors. And then there's capital, which is taking the difference between your purchase price and your sale price, and comes a lot of capital gains tax exemptions. So there was a strong view in the room that they wanted averaged over 5 years, so that was done. And we also want credibility in these units. You get units coming in from the former Eastern Bloc countries or Kazakhstan. You have to ask the question, the legitimacy of those units. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But the units from Australia will be absolutely bona fide and SMIC, and people who want to buy those units can buy them with the clear thought that they stand for something. Right behind me in grass, the more you put carbon into the soil, the difference between your baseline and what you go up to, you can get a unit. And we also made sure there was no downside for farmers. If they want to participate, there's upside, not downside, because all what we see around here, all the vegetation, this is dead from the drought, a lot of it. But a lot of this vegetation we were dispossessed of it. It was stolen without payment during the Kyoto process, and we're not going to let that happen again. Obviously, we fought for a fund. There's a fund in there. Yep. And a heap of things.
Well, this fund.
Sorry, you go.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm told that it's effectively a regional future fund, isn't it? We're talking about
That's correct.
I'm told it's serious dollars. Can you give our viewers and many of them watching around the regions this morning, give us a bit more detail on that. What can we expect as part of that regional future fund?
Well, even though we're selling more thermal coal at a higher price than we've ever sold before on this in Australia, if people say these global trends, which they tell us are going to happen, they'll tell us from Glasgow that's going to happen. Well, of course, you're going to need a parallel income that is growing at the same time as the other one is toning down or fading off. You've got to make sure that people, especially in the mining industry, can go from one mining job to another mining job, if that is what is going to happen. And if it doesn't, we're going to make sure that people can still export coal, and we don't have a methane mandate and all that other sort of stuff that would completely pull the rug out from underneath regional Australia. But we need a fund that actually moves things towards that. I mean, a lot of these people, they don't need another art gallery and or river walks, which are incredibly nice and good for social infrastructure. They need a fund that actually inspires the new businesses that are going to employ people to start up. If what the Globe is saying is going to happen, but I suppose one looks to China now, with China or India and Russia and other countries not participating, maybe that won't happen. I don't know.
And so just give us a bit more detail on how that fund is going to work, though. Is it about building infrastructure? Is it about building roads? Just flesh that out for us, please.
It could be. It could. Yeah. Well, we're also making sure that we'll have a substantial infrastructure budget, nonetheless. This is, but it's whatever inspires the growth of that. Like if you go to a regional area, it might be the fundamental infrastructure of connecting it to gas, or making sure your water infrastructure is there, or making sure your roads are there, or supporting the process of other businesses there. We talked through the agreement of consideration of the expansion of the Regional Investment Corporation to not just farmers, but to regional businesses, and the same with the NAIF, Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund, to make sure that if we want to set up a hydrogen industry, we can stand beside it and set it up. Critical minerals downstream, if we want to stand beside it and set it up, we can set it up. These are the things, and we're not going to dig the mine or build the plant. That's private enterprise, but we're going to do the things that sit beside it, Kieran, that help that industry grow. I mean, it is a substantial fund, and it's incredibly important that the regional people see the Nationals as going to bat and making sure that first of all, we don't pull the rug out from underneath their income stream, like such things as methane emissions. And what we did through the process, because it's negotiations between two parties, is turn things that were implicit, maybe not mentioned, to explicit. That is definitely mentioned and definitely ruled out.
Hence, that methane exclusion. I guess that's what you're referring to there. But with the fund, is it going to operate like is it going to be operating like the other future fund? Is that how you see it? That there'll be an amount committed by the government and then invested on an annual basis?
Well, I mean, that'll be determined by Cabinet as it comes through, but there's definitely a fund, and we'll have to see. If you build it up like the future fund, you've probably got a long lag before you can start getting money from it to do things. As I said, Kieran, if the predictions about a transition away from coal happen quickly, it'll probably happen before the future fund has time to pay a dividend. So you'd have to consider those things as they come along. But as I say now, luckily, this nation, underpinning all your health and your education, your defence, is exporting more coal at a higher price than ever has before.
Are you vulnerable to political attack from the Hansons of the world and Palmer, Newman? They're going to be coming at you from the right flank at this election.
Yeah. That's politics, but it's quite clear. We had two choices. We could have not negotiated, we could have demonstrated. The Prime Minister, and this is another good reason that we sort of delayed for a while, has said quite clearly he was going to Glasgow whether he had our agreement or not. There would have been an agreement, it just would have happened without us, and all the negotiations that we did would have been left out and would be much worse. On top of that, of course, they would have a cabinet decision, which a number of our cabinet ministers would have had a different position, would have had to resign. I think that was pretty much clear. We would have gone to an election and we would have lost. Now, that was the alternative. Which one do you think is better? Indeed.
Well, Matthias Cormann's had a bit of a change of heart as well. He wants all nations to adopt the carbon price.
He certainly has, Kieran. He certainly has. He's not seeing that anymore. He's seeing the Colosseum and the Louvre. He's seen the Louvre and he's changed his mind. Anyway, cattle for the country, eh?
The road to Damascus. Now, the reopening, I've got to ask you about that. Reopening tomorrow across the nation, across a bit large parts of the nation, not all of it, of course, but in your part of New South Wales, are you confident the regions are equipped to deal with whatever comes now at this part of the pandemic?
Well, I'm very confident that people they're sick of this. They want to move on. They want our economy to operate like an economy and the nation to operate like a nation. The only feedback I'm getting now, or maybe it was different for half a year ago, is people are over this, over being locked in their houses. It's all right for me because when I get locked up, if I get locked up here, that's not too bad. In fact, you can hardly notice the difference. But for people locked up in a flat, the screaming kids, people locked up in a house, I mean, they're just over this. They want to get on with their lives, and I'm fully supportive of that. So I say to the states, let's just get on with it. Let's get going. Let's move and get this nation going back. You're going to say, I'll tell you something. I know little about lots, but I know lots about politics. If you hang on to this idea that locking people down is a great idea, you're going to lose the election, whichever state or wherever you are.
Acting Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce joining me live from Danglemarm. I appreciate it. Thanks for chatting to us this Sunday.
You're welcome, Kieran. And obviously, to Patty Newton, it's sad she's lost Bert, and all the very best to her family.